A day to remember for the rest of your lives.
There's a great promise for all of you.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame and Extreme Networks present the Heart of a Hall of Famer program. With nearly 100 Hall of Famers participating, we have reached 48 states around this country, sharing the message that football is more than a game and can teach Americans how to huddle up during a time when we need to be united.
It's time for America to take a real deep dive. Not at no one else, but at yourself individually. If you want to change America, don't brush your teeth with your head down. Look at who you are and be the example. Be the example.
An opportunity to meet and learn from one of the greatest football players of all time. But more than that, the chance to see that their Hall of Fame life wasn't given to them. Single-parent homes, drug-infested neighborhoods, and poverty.
I grew up in a neighborhood that was considered one of the worst in America, and the household I grew up in was one of the worst in that neighborhood. By the time I was 20 years old, I knew at least 30 friends or family members who had lost their lives. Football became like a second parent to me. It taught me the things that my father wasn't there to teach me, and that my mother, as a struggling, single-parent woman, just didn't know to teach me.
But they learn how to live a life of character before pursuing their football careers. Today, you will learn you can do the same that they once did. Making good decisions can lead to a prosperous life both on and off the field. Your game for life has already begun. It's your decision whether or not you want to be a successful student, son, daughter, brother, or sister.
Every one of you can have a Hall of Fame life, whether or not you play football. You can be as great as you want to be. The Hall of Fame is all about integrity, character, and excellence. You have the opportunity to represent yourself that way. You determine your character.
Welcome to a once-in-a-lifetime program, the Heart of a Hall of Famer.
Aeneas Williams entered the NFL as a third-round draft pick of the Arizona Cardinals in 1991. He quickly established himself as a leader on defense, eventually becoming one of the best defensive backs in team history. In 2001, Williams was traded to St. Louis, where he was a key component in the Rams' run to Super Bowl 36.
Intercepted by the Rams, it's Aeneas Williams. What a play by the All-Pro.
Aeneas Williams was named to the NFL's All-Decade Team of the 90s. He was selected to 8 Pro Bowls, while leaving a lasting legacy with 2 franchises.
I got 2 statements if you don't remember anything I say. 2 statements if you don't remember anything else I say. Begin with the end in mind and die empty. Begin with the end in mind and die empty. See, Hall of Famers, we die empty. See, we left it on the field. I don't want to play anymore. To the current players, it's your turn. Your career right now is like wet cement. My cement is already dry, so are ours. We put our handprints in it. It's your turn, it's wet. You do what you're supposed to do because God has given you a blessing.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aeneas Williams.
Welcome. Welcome. All right, and with that, I'd like to welcome our students here today to our latest installment, the last one we're going to have here this school year here in Canton, Ohio, of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer series, powered by Extreme Networks. Our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. Those values we speak of are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which we're going to talk about today. Eventually, when you guys got some questions out there, I know you do, and we'll get to those here soon. My name is Jake Ray. I'm the Youth and Education Manager here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Proud to be joined on stage by class of 2014 inductee and gold jacket, Mr. Aeneas Williams. But before we turn things over to him, do have a few thank yous I want to send out. First of all, I want to thank our folks at Extreme Networks who power this program. Without them, This program wouldn't take place. They do a lot of great things for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but they do a lot of great things for schools across the country as well. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers and administrators, for bringing your students here today or who are watching online, letting their classrooms be a part of this event. And then lastly, I need to thank the students. Without you guys, this program doesn't happen. You guys are going to be the ones asking the questions, driving the program today. So we're excited to hopefully see where that program goes, which directions, and all the stuff we can touch on. So the schools we got here today, where's Washington Park High School at? One person. All right. There we go. All right, there we go. We've got Kent Roosevelt High School. All right, a little bit better. Toledo Rogers High School. All right. We've got Claymont High School. Or not. We've got the Glen Oak High School. All right. And then lastly, we got Waynedale High School. That last one there was pretty good. Throughout the program today, we're going to be taking questions from our students here in Canton, Ohio. Some of you guys got cards this morning when you walked in. They're all sitting in the back of the room. So when we prompt you guys, go ahead and step up to the microphone, ask your question, state your name, what school you go to. If you do have a question and you don't have a card throughout the program, if you think of something, go ahead and head to the back of the room, find some of our staff members, and we'll hopefully see if we can get your question in as part of the program. We're also going to be taking questions from our Facebook Live broadcast. We're live right now on the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Facebook page. So we're going to be taking some questions from them as well, people who are watching literally all across the country. And with that being said, I'd like to welcome Class of 2014 inductee in gold jacket, Mr. Aeneas Williams.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we talk about those values: commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence. Do one of those stand out as more? And they're all important. Does one stand out as more important to you?
Well, one comes to mind, I mentioned early on, is courage. And because courage played a huge part, and courage does not mean fear is not present. Courage means there's something that you decide to do regardless whether you feel fear or not. And I actually met a couple of people I want to acknowledge early on. Is Cecilia, are you here? Where are you, Cecilia? Yeah, stand up for a second, Cecilia. And Luke and Spencer, where are you? So Cecilia, she's the smallest in her group. Spencer and Luke, they came up to me outside. Cecilia and her friends came up to me inside the enshrinement. And I want to thank you guys for having the courage to come up to me and make sure I knew who you were. And I appreciate your kind words, but I wanted to acknowledge, and some of you all may have met as well, keep that courage. In other words, never be afraid in your lives to go and introduce yourself to people, because what you'll find out, I realize you are just as important as I am. And it said a lot when you, the smallest of the group, came and asked me some questions, and then for Spencer and Luke to even mention that you looked at my football life. So I had them stand up just because I am no different from you guys. I don't know if I would have had the courage that you guys exhibited, juniors and seniors, at your age. So thank you so much for the honor, and it is an honor to be here with you. And as they're standing, this characteristic called courage, always remember, it doesn't mean you're not fearful. It just means in spite of it, you still go on and do what you know to do. Believe it or not, I used to be afraid as an NFL player to go against guys that were bigger than me. Randy Moss is 6'4", 220 pounds. Michael Irvin is 6'3", maybe 210. I'm 5'10 and a half, 190 pounds. But guess what? In spite of the weight and height differences, I still showed up. So keep doing it, Cecilia. Keep doing it, Spencer and Luke. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, Jake.
We'll give them a round of applause, yeah? We talked about it earlier today, and the students here saw a brief snippet there of your enshrinement speech, and it's one of my favorite that I've ever seen. And you talked about beginning with the end in mind and then dying empty. Can you talk a little bit to these students here about what you meant during your enshrinement speech?
It's real simple. When, believe it or not, I walked on the football team a week before the season started my junior year in college at Division I AA Southern University. I didn't even think I could play, certainly in the NFL, let alone be one of the 326 enshrinees here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When I say begin with the end in mind, how many drove here? Anybody rode on the bus here? Anybody, right? When you guys got on the bus, did you know where you were going? Right? Nobody got on that bus and that bus driver announced, hey, we're getting ready to get on the road, we don't know where we're going. Did that happen to anybody? Well, how many people live their lives like that? They just jump on life and don't know where they're going. So believe it or not, before I ever thought I could become an NFL player, when I was in college, I looked in the pros and I looked for players that I wanted to be like. And one of them, for all of you Cleveland Brown fans, was a player by the name of Frank Minifield. Frank Minifield was my same height, and I also played in a press coverage similar to what he did. So he was one of the guys, he was an all-pro cornerback in the pros. I was in college. Begin with the end in mind is, look out ahead and see if you can find someone that's doing something that makes it possible for you to believe it's possible. So Frank Minifield was one of the guys. Another guy was Ronnie Lott. He's in the Hall of Fame. Has anybody ever heard of Ronnie Lott? Yeah. So Ronnie Lott was a hard hitter. Frank Minifield was a good cover guy. I wanted to be a cornerback that can cover and hit you. My good friend Deion Sanders and I joke with him. Deion was a great cover guy. He was a good tackler, but he didn't necessarily want to go mix it up like I like to mix it up. So I wanted to be what's called a complete cornerback, one that could cover and one could be an aggressive tackler. So guess what I did while in college? I had Frank Minifield as an example in the pros, Ronnie Lott as an example in the pros. I had a shirt spray painted that I would wear on the college campus. I spray painted on the back Mini Lott, and I would wear the shirt. So of course my college teammates thought I was crazy. They would laugh at me. They say, oh, he think he's Mini Lott. Who is? They didn't know what I was doing. But what I was doing was becoming very clear as to the type of player I wanted to be. So I had people start calling me two guys that had actually lived out what I wanted to be. And guess what? Now that I'm in the Hall of Fame, Jake, guess what? When fans come up who saw me play, each of them say, you were a complete corner. So what did I do? I began right down and then found other people that could help me get a vision of what I wanted. So that's what begin with the end in mind is like. Begin to write down the desires in your heart of what you want to be, what you want to do. Even if you don't know how to get there, even if you're not sure if you can get there, what's been placed in your heart is God's secret treasure that's hidden in you. And a lot of times people don't tap into it because the secret treasure, the future he has of you, you don't see it. I wasn't a good football player. I was decent. And guess what? I was slow. So slow people don't go to the NFL in my position. I had a big nose, they told me. Big ears, they told me. And believe it or not, I had a little dip in my head. So the whole time, I'm just thinking I'm a normal guy. I'm not very good. But the whole time I had the potential to be an NFL Hall of Famer. Die empty simply means the goal of life is to exhaust your potential. Your gifts that have been put in you, what's one of my gifts? One of my gifts is the ability to naturally be able to communicate effectively. Difficult information, make it simplistic, help it be inspirational so someone can go on and use the information that I'm sharing. So that's part of my gifting. That's what God gave me. But guess what? I work on my gifting. I get better at it. I worked hard as a football player. It wasn't that I was just talented. So your gift or your talent is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift to God. Dying empty means so many people go to the grave not having exhausted their potential. Why I get excited about speaking with students? Because I've already lived and sat in your seat. And I remember thinking everybody else was great, everybody else was better, not realizing that I had greatness in me. So die empty means the goal of life is to go to the grave having exhausted your potential. Where so many go to the grave having never become everything that God had created them to become. Could be for fear, could be because you didn't find the right mentors, or you didn't take advantage of your opportunities. That's why I love speaking to the heart you future Hall of Famers in the endeavors that you choose in your life. Thank you, Jake.
All right, we're going to turn it over to our students. Look like we already got one up there to the mic, so go ahead and step up. State your name, what school you go to, and then ask your question.
My name is Javon Johnson. I go to Rogers High School. My first question is, what do you miss most about playing the game of football?
Javon's question is, what do I miss most about playing the game of football? Wow, what do I miss most? Like most players miss the locker room. Because, man, in the locker room, we joke on each other. You can encourage your teammate. The one thing about football, because it's a team sport, even if another player on another team is better than you, you're still not by yourself. We can do things on the team, Javon, to help that player not get taken advantage of by another player. That's why it's called a team sport. So what I miss the most is the times that we have in the locker room. Because no matter what else you do, it's nothing like the locker room, wrestling with each other, messing with each other, just joking with each other. It's so hard to replicate that experience and that environment in any other field of endeavor. And if you ask most former players, they will tell you that's what they miss the most. That's the locker room. Great question, Javon.
All right, we're going to head and have our next student step up to the microphone. State your name, what school you go to, and then ask your question.
Hello, Mr. Williams. My name's David. I go to Waynedale. And my question for you is, when adversity struck, when things got hard, where did you go to regain your confidence?
Oh, wow. Great question, David. So I was voted NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year, my rookie year with the Cardinals. The next year, I had a rough patch of games. And a rough patch of games, the other thing, I always get the question, who was the toughest receiver to play against in the NFL? I always get that question all over the country. And I always tell people it wasn't one person. Because in the National Football League, even players you've never heard of, because they are professionals, they can clean your clock. In other words, they can have a good day on you. So it's not like college where you got one great player and then the next week, two teams that don't have great players. The pros, everybody can take advantage of you. So that second year, I was going against a guy named Fred Barnett. And this was Sunday Night Football. He played with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Fred cleaned my clock. He scored 2 touchdowns on me, over 50 yards each. And then the second touchdown, I caught up with him. He grabbed my face mask, Jake, and dragged me into the end zone. And so Fred wasn't very well known, but he was a very good receiver. The next week, I was getting ready. We were playing the Dallas Cowboys. And I was getting ready to go against Michael Irvin. So I knew Michael Irvin knew, man, if Fred Barnett tore him up, oh, I can't wait to get Aeneas next week. And that next week, David, Michael Irvin scored over a 60-yard touchdown on me. And if you don't know about football, those that do will understand what I'm getting ready to say. After we lost to Dallas and Michael Irvin took advantage of me, on the front cover of the sports section in Phoenix newspaper, the Phoenix Gazette, it says, Aeneas Williams, the toast of Phoenix. Now, if you play cornerback, that's not a compliment. If they're calling you toast, that means receivers are catching balls on you. And David, I was all down, man. I was like, man, this good rookie year, now I'm in my second year. Can I do this? So I'm a Christ follower. I gave my life to Christ my junior year in college. So first thing I did was pray, and I said, God, help me learn from this, because that's what you got to do when you have bad experience. You got to learn from it. And then, David, I looked at the film to learn what mistakes I had made. And then I went back to practice and worked so hard as if I'd never, ever given up a touchdown. And because of that attention, and one of the values of the Pro Football Hall of Fame is excellence. And excellence is not perfection. It's attempting to paying attention to details. And why I bring that up is because I went back out to practice with excellence. So I can learn from my mistake, but now go out and play the next team, learning from that mistake and playing it with excellence. And that's how I was able to get over it. Great question, David. Thank you.
We mentioned we got some questions coming in on Facebook, so if you're watching, go ahead and put your question there into the comments section. We'll see if we can make it part of the program. But we got one. Not country. We're not just through the United States. This question is coming all the way from the United Kingdom.
The United Kingdom.
We got Jason to ask, what do you consider to be the best game of your career?
The best game of my career. Hold up. I should have asked this at the beginning. Any Dallas Cowboy fans in here? There's always a few in the bunch. Always a few. So the Dallas Cowboys, when we were in Arizona, out of 10 years of playing with the Cardinals, we only made the playoffs 1 year. That 1 year in the regular season, Dallas had beaten us twice. And even though we were a good team and we played tough, Dallas always had this confidence. Troy Aikman, the quarterback, Emmitt Smith, the running back, Michael Irvin, the receiver. They always have this confidence. No matter how tough the Cardinals play, they're like our little brothers. We eventually going to beat them. And so they had beat us twice in the regular season. We had to win the last 4 games to get in the playoffs. And the last game was with the San Diego Chargers. My former teammate, Kwame Lassiter, the late Kwame Lassiter, he had 4 interceptions in the game, and we were able to beat the San Diego Chargers. We end up in the playoffs for the first time, and this is my 8th season in the league. We had to go down and play the Cowboys a 3rd time in Texas Stadium. And when we played them, we ate them up, man. We finally beat the Cowboys. And that was one of my great games, great memories, when we were able to beat the Cowboys. That's right. Take that, Mr. Jones and Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman, and Emmitt Smith. Appreciate it. Y'all can tell I get a little excited about this.
All right, we're going to go back to our student here at the mic. Go ahead and state your name, what school you go to, and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Tyler Kirby from Kent Roosevelt High School.
What's your name again?
Tyler Kirby.
Tyler, yes, like Tyler Murray, first pick in the draft, Arizona Cardinals.
I want to know, who were some of your mentors growing up, and who did you aspire to be like?
Great question, Tyler. The great thing growing up in New Orleans, I grew up in Holly Grove. My dad's the first college graduates on both sides of the family. My mom ran our florist. We're one of the few minorities that have the floor license in the state of Louisiana, so we own the florist. I have 2 older brothers. So the first question, Tyler, I never had to look outside my house for a role model. Between the 2 older brothers and my parents, it was amazing. I'm so fortunate. Secondly, now when it came down to growing, my brother Achilles, who's 18 months older than I am, 2 grades ahead of me, he was really my role model. I literally tried to become him. The only reason I went to Southern is because Achilles was already there. The reason I majored in accounting is because of Achilles. He's a CPA today. I have an accounting degree. I don't even like numbers. How about that, right? So I was following him. So Achilles, and then when I wanted to be a great corner, I told you about Frank Minifield, Ronnie Lott. Even though I hadn't met them, sometimes your mentors do not have to be someone that you've met. You can read about them and aspire to accomplish the things that they've accomplished. Secondly, I had 2 guys while in college who I just would get around and work out with, a guy named Kevin Lewis and Maurice Hurst. These were 2 guys who actually helped me believe that it was even possible that I could play in the NFL. I would just go work out with those guys, and eventually, Tyler, I started getting better, and that's when I found out the power of the people you're around. And because I was around Kevin and Maurice, I changed the other friends that I were around, and I started getting around people who were successful at being very good cornerbacks. And then in the pros, a guy named Gil Bird, I befriended. He was 8 years ahead of me in the pros, played for the San Diego Chargers. He was an All-Pro and a Pro Bowl cornerback. I hadn't made All-Pro. This is going into my 4th year. After we played the San Diego Chargers, I went to Mr. Gil Bird. I said, Mr. Bird, can I get your phone number? And I called him up, and my wife Tracy, we've been married over 26 years. We went to his house, stayed in his house with he and his wife Marilyn. Gil took me to the Chargers facilities, and he helped me understand the mindset of an All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and a cornerback that can lead the league in interceptions. And do you know, the year after working out with him, after being with him, I literally led the league in interceptions, made the Pro Bowl for my first time, and made All-Pro. That's when I started finding out the power of mentorship. Credible success for others who've already done well what you're trying to do. Great question, Tyler.
On the flip side of that, throughout your career and, towards the end of your career, did you mentor anybody who came up into the league like Mr. Bird did for you?
No doubt. One of the things, sometimes guys in the NFL and sometimes people on their jobs, when they're older, they don't tell the younger guys everything they know because they're afraid of the younger guy taking their job. I never was afraid of anybody taking my job. I never worried about getting cut, none of that. All I wanted to do is be the best player I could be. So when the younger players, to answer your question, Jake, when the younger players would come ask me questions, I taught them everything I knew. Because not only it was good for them, it was good for the team. Secondly, if those players were not better as a result of me being around them, I was a poor leader. So I always wanted the guys to know more. And once I retired, many of them went on to be far better than they probably would have been without some of the wisdom, not just of myself, some of the veterans that were around him because of the culture that we had set on those teams. Great question.
All right, we'll send to the back of the room for our next question. State your name, your school, and then go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Andrew Dirth with the great Glen Oak High School.
Did you say Andrew?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You can call me Drew. If you didn't play football, did you have a backup plan?
So that's a good question. I can call you Drew? Drew, yeah. That's a good question. I didn't have any backup plans. It was, I graduated from college. Either I was going to play in the NFL or I was going to work. Here's what I'm so excited that I found out. I told you guys I have an accounting degree. Because my parents taught me hard work, if I had not played football, if I had gone into accounting, I would have been a good accountant, but I would have been miserable because I don't like numbers. But I could work and earn a living doing it. So while all of you guys are young, here's what I want to encourage you to do. Begin to assess your natural giftings. If I know what I know now, Drew, I would have majored in communications. People pay me very large sums of money to communicate information. My wife and I are pastors of a church. I communicate every week. And you know what? I love getting up. I can't wait to wake up. I can't wait to hear birds. I couldn't wait to get here and share with you guys the little wisdom that I've learned. Why? It's your turn now. And if I could share with each and every one of you all, make sure you assess and find out what you like to do and what your giftings are. Do not go major in college and major in stuff just to make money. That's only one part of it. If you find out what you're good, they were asking Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, two of the wealthiest people in the world. They were speaking in an environment like this at one of the Ivy League schools. And one of the students, Drew, asked a question. They said, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Gates, where do you see industry going over the next 10 years, and what should we be majoring in? And Mr. Buffett, who was probably in his 80s at the time, he says, I don't know how to answer that question. I would much rather you find a degreed program in line with what you love to do and your passion. And then he said, I've been selling stocks since I was 11 years old. Bill Gates had been working with computers from a child. So to answer that question, there was no backup plan. What I wish I would have known what I know now is what I just shared with you guys. When you get ready to think about college, assess your gifts and your talents, and then find a major in line with those gifts and talents. And you will find yourself never having to work in your life. To me, Jake, this is not work. This is like oxygen for me because I love it. Great question, Drew.
We got another question that came in here on Facebook, kind of along the same lines is, you know, you had your great, excellent football career, one of the reasons you have the gold jacket. But after your football career ended, what did you find yourself doing? Was it coaching? Was it straight into working in a church? What took up your time?
Well, one, I started out by buying 6 car dealerships at one time, while I was still playing, which wasn't wise at all, right? So it wasn't wise at all. So what happens? The only reason people fail is broken focus. So the first thing I look back at that experience, while still playing, I should have never purchased any car dealerships. Secondly, I purchased too many at one time. I should have purchased one. There's a proverb, there's a scripture that says, be fruitful, then multiply. So why am I telling you guys all of this? now that you guys are students, really as students, you shouldn't have any debt, I don't think. Shouldn't have a bunch of credit card debt, I don't think. So your number one goal, your goal should be listen to your parents or your guardians or grandparents, teachers, coaches, and then pay attention in school. Pay attention in school, and then athletically be the best you can in your sport. So when it comes down to that question, it goes back to being able to stay focused. So staying focused meaning I wouldn't have bought those dealerships until I was way finished. And then I probably would have bought just one and not been so focused on it, because that's not what I love to do. My passion has always been, because Jesus Christ changed my life, and I began to understand from Scripture how Scripture was to impact my life, I wanted to spend the rest of my life sharing with other people what somebody taught me, where I would now understand my faith in a practical way, and then now be able to help other people do it. So that's how I was able to finally get to what my wife and I are doing now. Great question.
So we talk about stuff, after your career. I've been lucky to be at some events with one of our great partners, Centene, and some of the events you've done across the country with the Strong Youth, Strong Communities. Can you tell everybody here and everybody tuning in what those events are about, who they're impacting, and kind of the message that everybody's trying to get across?
So Centene is a major corporation in the healthcare industry. It's partnered with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Strong Youth, Strong Community. So really, we traveled the world, or traveled this country, speaking to youth. This started in the heart of a fellow Hall of Famer who is one of my mentors, One of the shortest guys in the hall is Darryl Green. He's 5'9", and he's probably, to this day, still the fastest player that's ever played in the NFL. Believe it or not. This is true story. I don't care how fast they are, Tyreek Hill, I don't care who they are, Darryl Green is still, if not the fastest, one of the fastest that ever played in the National Football League. So when we go throughout the country, we talk to middle schoolers and high schoolers. Actually, we don't talk to you. Just as I'm doing now, I'm not talking at you. What I want to do is, I wish I had someone, it was my parents at that time when I was your age, to share the things that I'm sharing with you, because has anybody ever, as we talk with these students, one thing I want them to realize why it's so important, why I love talking to the youth. Anybody growing up in the neighborhood, you used to see the people laying cement in your neighborhood? Like wet cement, anybody? Nobody? There's cement in your neighborhood, right? Does anybody remember when they were laying cement that if you wanted to write your name in it, put your fingerprints in it, you had to hide, wait till they left, but you had a certain amount of time before it dried, that you need to put your finger, your handprints, everything in it. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So guess what? Most of you guys are high schoolers and middle schoolers. In life, once you've already been in a spot, I've already been a high school or middle schooler. So as relates to my high school and middle school years, the cement is dry. In other words, I can't do anything about what I've already put in it. As an NFL player, I'm in the Hall of Fame. So now the cement is dry. I've already accomplished it, so that's in ink. Your guys, your cement is wet. You now get to decide where you're going to put in that wet cement, so later on when you're 51 years old, you don't want to look back with regrets. That's why we love going throughout the city, Jake, talking to middle schoolers and high schoolers. To what? Because we can relate. We know what it's like, peer pressure. I know what it's like for your friends to tell you you have a big nose, for your friends to tell you you have big ears, for your friends to tell you you have big feet. And I even had a dip in my head. And they would laugh at me. I didn't even like my name. My name's Aeneas, but people mistakenly call me Aeneas all the time. Yeah, right? Yeah, how about that? So I wanted a name like John or like Larry, right? So what I mean is, we know what it's like to be teenagers, where everybody else, particularly with social media, so now everybody's posting all their good days. And they take 100 pictures and then they pick one. And then all of us start comparing ourselves to their one picture, right? No, I want to share with you, I was just as good as everybody else. I just didn't know it. So part of our role with Centene and with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Darryl Green, Anthony Munoz, Clay Matthew this past week, is to remind each of you guys, you have a purpose, you're great at something, and make sure you respect each other and know that each and every one of you are highly valuable and important. And that's what we love, going around the country and sharing this with the youth. So you can learn from our mistakes so you don't have to go through them. So great question. Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to our next student in the back of the room. Go ahead and state your name, what school you go to, and then ask your question.
Hi, my name's Emily, and I go to Wayndale High School. And my question for you is, why did you start playing football?
Emily, great question. Why did I start? I think initially it was for my parents sending us to Harrell Park to get us out the house. I think that's how I started. And then all of a sudden I started at 4 years old in my park, Harrell Park. Odell Beckham Jr. played there. Who else played there? Leonard Fournette, Ed Reed. So many came from our park. Started playing when I was four years old. I love the physical nature of football. And what a lot of people don't know, and I share with the current players, football, believe it or not, started in the Ivy League schools here in our country. Football was never just a brute, dumb man sport. It was literally teaching young men how to strategically prepare for battle. Usually, in the hall, if you get to interview a lot of the Hall of Famers, fellow Hall of Famers, they didn't get here just because they were great athletes. They got here as well because they were also cerebral players. So I love playing it not only because of the physical part, but the mental toughness that it demanded early on. So great question. Thank you, Emily.
All right, we'll go to our next question here in the back. State your name, your
Cecilia!
School, which we already know, and then go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Mr. Williams. My question is, every athlete at one time or another has faced a degree of nervousness prior to competing. How are you able to get rid of the nerves?
I was able to get rid of nerves to number one, reconcile. What do I mean reconcile? All of us get nervous. If I ask each of you all to stand up, each at one at a time, and ask each of you all to stand up and tell me your name, what school, like you guys just did, all of you all will probably be nervous. The only difference is some, in spite of the nervousness, will still stand up and say and do what you need to do. How I've learned to get over the nervousness, not only in my relationship with Christ, but to learn everybody gets nervous. Everybody makes mistakes. And if I had tripped coming up here, like some people trip and everybody would have laughed,
I would have caught you.
I would have laughed as well. You know why? Because people trip. What I mean is, how I learned to get over it, Cecilia, is to realize there are certain things that are just common. If all of us go work out outside when it gets 80 degrees, which is a great day here in Canton, how about that, right? Guess what? We're all going to sweat. Nobody's going to freak out when you start seeing water drip off of your face. Why? It's common to all of us. So how I learned to get over it is to realize even Troy Aikman, even all the greats that you know of, all of us get nervous. We're not superheroes. All of those, what's the end game? What's the movie that's just, what is it? Avengers, right? None of us are supernatural Avengers, all right? We're common people like you, and that's what I want to say to each and every one of you all. We get nervous sometimes when we're with crowds. We're not always comfortable in the room, even though it looks like we are. We're doing what we know to do in spite of us being uncomfortable. So the best way to sum this up is, Cecilia, I've learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Great question.
So we've been across the pond to the UK. We're now going to go north to Toronto.
Toronto,
We got a question
Canada.
from Bill here on Facebook. It says, what was the toughest moment in your career that shook your faith, and how did you get past that?
Wow, that's a good question. Let me think about that. The toughest moment. Oh, man. One of the toughest moments is learning when you make a mistake. So going into my 12th year, my 11th year, going into my 11th year, going into my 12th year, we played the first 6. We had just gone to the Super Bowl. We lost the year before. We lost to the Patriots. Tom Brady. Adam Vinatieri. I can see the field goal going into the uprights right now. Forgive me for that moment, all right? So the next year, we started off 0-5. And I had an injury. My big toe was bothering me. So we're getting ready to, the next game would have been a 6th game. We 0-5. It didn't start off well. And my toe is hurting. The next week, the 6th game, we're going to play the Seattle Seahawks. My coach, my defense coordinator, Coach Lovie Smith, called me in. He says, look, Aeneas, we noticed you've been struggling in the early part of the season, and we think you should take this week off. Next week, we have an open date, so take this week off, don't play against Seattle, and then next week we have an open date, so you got 2 weeks off, come back in the 8th week. Well, I had pride. You know what my pride was? I had never missed a game. I had started all games all the way through 11 seasons, plus the first 5. So as I listened to him, he's giving me great advice, Jake. He's giving me great advice. Don't play. I got pride, but nobody knows it. I don't want to miss a game, so I'm not listening to my coach. Because sometimes God gives, many times, wisdom through your coaches and through your parents that you don't see. Well, guess what happened in that 6th game? Great question from Toronto. I dislocated my ankle, and I fractured my fibula, and I was out the rest of the year. So you know what I started learning? Listen to my coaches and my parents. Great question from Toronto. Go Raptors.
All right, we're going to send to the back of the room here for our next question. Go ahead and state your name, your school, and then ask your question.
How you doing, Mr. Williams? My name is Malik Smith, and I'm from Rogers High School. And my question was, you played 3 seasons with Pat Tillman. What was he like?
Malik? Yes. That's your name? Yes. So honor to meet you. Pat Tillman, I saw him. He was drafted with the Cardinals. He was Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year. May have been Pac-12 at the time. And if you don't know, Pat Tillman, one of the few NFL players that ever, at the height of his career, in the middle of him being successful, he literally left the NFL and went, served in the Army, and eventually ended up being killed with friendly fire, I think, somewhere in Afghanistan. Pat Tillman is one of the most unique human beings I've ever been around. Not only is he an American hero, but he was a conscientious person, highly intelligent. He could talk to you about any subject, religion, sports, politics, it didn't matter. He's one of the toughest men I've ever been around in my life. If you are ever hanging from a cliff by a rope and you need somebody to hold you, or if they let it go, you would die, Pat Tillman would be one of the men that I would want holding the rope. And when he left the game to go into the military, I wasn't surprised, because football was never his life. It was something that he did, but he never allowed it to be who he was. So to see Pat leave the game, he had just signed a multi-million-dollar contract with the team. He decided to go serve his country, and it was a short time, a few years later, after 9/11 happened. He's one of the guys that I respect. He's one of the best human beings that has ever played in the National Football League, and he represents Arizona State University well as Arizona Cardinals and the National Football League. Great question.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to the back of the room now for our next question. State your name, your school, and then go ahead and ask your question here for Aeneas Williams.
Hello, my name is Travis Stout. I go to Glen Oak High School. And my question is, how did the game prepare you for the career you have after football?
Travis, great question. The game prepared me, one, is to understand, so I'm a pastor now, so one of the things the game helped me understand, that's you guys a Cardinal hat on. Come on, man. You got to turn that forward so we can see it, man. That's pride, the #1 pick. So let me get back to the original question. So how the game prepared, one, football is a unique game because it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter your skin color. There's one common goal. And the game of football not only prepared me as a pastor, it prepares me as a business person, it prepares me even to be in a group, to realize that the game of football brings people together with one common vision. So if there's anything that I would say that played a huge role in what I'm doing now, it is the game of football where you set a vision for the team, communicate the vision to the team, and make sure everybody knows their role. If you want to know the secret sauce to Bill Belichick, Coach Belichick with the Patriots, it's really not deep. He has a common vision. He gets people on the team to accomplish it, and he makes sure everyone knows their role, and he makes sure everybody does their job. And no one, Travis, right?
Yeah.
No one is more important than the team. No one is more important to the team. It's just like in this room. Everybody is significant and essential in this room. So that's what I learned from the game of football. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
While we're talking about the Cardinals, first overall pick in the draft last week, taking Murray, their quarterback. You were drafted in the 3rd round, so you weren't that first pick off the board. You weren't the first guy off the board. What was your draft experience like, and does it compare to any of the things that guys today go through?
It does. I wasn't at the draft. I was literally rated the number 2 cornerback in the league behind Ty Light out of Notre Dame, coming out of this small Division I AA school, the Southern University. But to answer that question, Jake, I was the 59th pick. I think I was the 4th player taken in the 3rd round. What I realized, Kyler was the number 1 pick, but the truth is, in order to be successful, all of us have to do the same thing. Regardless of how you got on the team, you still got to focus, still got to study, still got to know your job, still have to be in great shape. And once we got on the team, it didn't matter how we got there, whether it's free agent, high draft pick, middle round draft pick. If they selected you, if they signed you, they wanted you on the team. So my focus was to do whatever I needed to do to accomplish my job and be the best that I could be. It's no different from Kyler. He's a quarterback. The quarterbacks have a huge influence on the game, but Kyler at every level, going all the way back to Texas, I don't think he lost a game, like 43-0 in high school. And then to go through the challenges and start 1 year at the University of Oklahoma. And then your beloved Baker Mayfield, who I know that you guys love here, right? Think about everything great that Baker did and end up being a first pick. Another guy, Kyler, comes behind and probably from learning from Baker, now excels, and now he's parlayed that into the first pick of the draft. And it is the first time any university has ever had back-to-back number 1 overall picks in the NFL draft. It's a unique opportunity for the University of Oklahoma and Kyler Murray.
So for any of you guys who have already been here today, you've obviously walked through the museum and you've kind of see everything we have on display that tells a story of the history of the game of professional football, and kind of the church of the building we like to call is that Hall of Fame gallery where all those bronze busts are on display. So when you're enshrined as a Hall of Famer, just like Aeneas was, you get 3 iconic symbols. You get the bronze bust, the Hager gold jacket, and the K Jewelers Ring of Excellence. All of these signify, that the career you had on the field. The bronze bust is going to stay here in Canton, Ohio for over 40,000 years. So we like to call it your second home.
Right.
So you get all these rewards, you get these iconic symbols, and you are enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What did that honor mean to you, and what has been like the coolest part of being a Hall of Famer been for you?
The coolest part by overwhelmingly is how important the history of the game is. Being inducted, I had no idea why so much money is spent on preserving the game. And with just kudos first to David Baker and the entire team, all of you guys, Jake, that do the work that you do and allow us to even be remembered is truly amazing. The other thing is this community. When you're here for enshrinement and you find out like there are over 5,000 volunteers here, it's like the hall is it's the town. And to meet all of these people who graciously and genuinely say welcome back or welcome home. There are a lot of other things we could talk about, but the truth is, when I get to meet all of the people, when I walk through the door, welcome home, welcome back. This city embodies it, Canton, and the leadership here in the city to embrace the home of pro football. And notice I didn't say NFL football. This is the home of pro football. For David Baker and the team, also, I attended a historical black college. So we have what's called HBCUs, historical black colleges and universities, where it's now stationed here in the hall. So I'll never forget in New York when the day after the Super Bowl, when we first met up with David Baker, and he had this vision of all this stuff I'm seeing happen and has happened way back in 2014. And then I remember he made a statement. He said, this is not a memorial, this is not just an enshrinement, but these jackets will be a key that Darryl Green refers to, a key to get into doors and do greater good as a result of being in the hall. Not just talk about, okay, I got a bus, 40,000, okay, great. But if I don't sit here and share whatever wisdom I have with you, if this bus, all you guys come here and see our bus and enjoy all of this stuff, but you don't get a chance to know that we're fellow humans just like you. We all come from different communities just like you. None of us are more important, just like you. Some of us have difficulties and handicaps, just like you. And that's what this is about. That's what excites me, that the vision of this hall and this team creates a culture of all of us doing the same thing, and that is giving back and using these jackets as a key to help better our communities.
All right, got time for a few more questions. We'll go ahead and take another student question here from the back of the room. State your name, your school, and then go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, I'm Brian Alexander from Kent Roosevelt. Was being a professional football player always a dream of yours, or was that developed later on?
Well, wanting to play in the NFL, as a big NFL fan, watching Monday Night Football, Howard Cosell, and all of that. So I always loved the game. My Little League team, we were the Rams. We were very good. I didn't lose all the way through junior high school because we played football in my junior high school, Carter G. Woodson. I didn't lose a game until I got to high school my sophomore year. We won city every year at Harrell. We won all of our games in my junior high, even though I was on the bench, never played. I didn't start again until my senior year of high school, and we ended up going undefeated, losing in the semifinal game to the team that eventually won state. So I wasn't sure as I got older that I could play. It wasn't until probably my second year of playing after I walked on that Lynn Burney, who's in the Hall of Fame, told my parents after a game that we had upset Jackson State, he said, your son is probably going to be playing on Sundays. And when they told me that, that's when I thought it was remotely possible. Great question, thank you.
All right, we got another question here from the back. Go ahead and step up to the mic, ask your question, or state your name, school, and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Austin. I'm from Wayndale, and my question is, when you were drafted by the Cardinals in '91, did you have a veteran player to take under, like, your wing, or his wing?
Yes, so the guy who was all-pro and a Pro Bowler on the Cardinals team when I was drafted is Tim McDonald. And Tim McDonald was a safety. He was the all-pro. He was the guy that really spoke into my life, and really, it was a number of guys that were already on the team. But I could tell you, prior to being drafted, I already had a couple of guys, Kevin and Maurice, who were, one was 2 years older than me, another was 1 year. They were cornerbacks, Kevin with the 49ers, Maurice with the New England Patriots. Those guys had instilled the work ethic and the believability that I could play in the NFL. And then a guy by the name of Gil Bird, who I befriended, who was an all-pro, a Pro Bowl cornerback, who really helped take my game to the next level as well. But I did have Tim McDonald actually on the team, one of the guys that helped me assimilate into the NFL culture. Great question.
All right, we'll send it back for another one. Go ahead and step up to the microphone, state your name and your school, and then ask your question.
Hello, my name is Jordan Tuttle from Kent Roosevelt, and my question is, who is the most influential coach you played for during your playing days?
Wow, most influential coach during my playing days. If I started with college, it would be Coach Percy Dewey, who was the defense coordinator that allowed me to actually have the opportunity to walk on the team. In the pros, it's a number of guys, but the one that comes to my mind, the one that spoke in my life, that I could lead the league in interceptions, that I could make all-pro, that I could make the Pro Bowl. The first coach that put his arms around me before that ever happened, going into my fourth year, was a guy by the name of Coach Rob Ryan, who was Buddy Ryan's son, Rex Ryan's twin brother. He had just gotten his first job with his dad. His dad was the head coach of the Cardinals. He hired his two sons, Rex and Rob was my DB coach. During that offseason when he got the job, the first time I met him, he put his arms around me. He says, Aeneas, you can lead the league in interceptions, just going into my 4th year. You can make All-Pro, and you can make the Pro Bowl. He says, I saw you do it in college. You set the national record, because my senior year, I broke the national record. I tied the national record with 11 interceptions my senior year. And do you know, this is when I found out the power of coaches and parents, but particular coaches. Because he was a coach and he said I could do it, I end up that year leading the league in interceptions, making All-Pro and making a Pro Bowl. So Rob Ryan played a huge role along with some others. Great question. Thank you.
I think we're going to wrap it up. You know, you've had so much advice and so many people mentoring you throughout your career. If you could leave everybody sitting in here, all the students, the teachers, everybody, and everybody we have watching on Facebook online, what is one piece of advice you want everybody to take away from today?
No doubt, honor your father and your mother. And if your parents are not involved, it's your guardian, your grandparents. This sounds so simple. It sounds like, man, is that all you have for us? Absolutely. At your age, your parents already have the wisdom, they already have the headaches, they already have the experiences. And even though you may think they don't know much, there was a guy named Mark Twain. I don't know if you've ever read about him. He was a great writer. He made a statement. He said, when I was 17 years old, I didn't think my parents knew anything. He said, but by the time I turned 22, I was shocked how much my parents had learned in 5 years. And what he meant by that is his parents were smart the whole time. It's just as he had gotten older, he realized the wisdom that they were giving him was wisdom that could help him in his life. So that's all. Honoring and listening. When I say listen to your parents, meaning their words carry weight with you more than your friends, more than other people, your parents, because why? They pay for your food. They give you free room and board, all this good stuff. And a lot of times they harp about stuff and you're like, well, what's the big deal? You don't realize what's going through their mind when they're sharing with you about something you don't think a big deal is. Because they love you. They love you. They don't want you to go through unnecessary heartache, because when you do, they go through it with you. So the simplest thing, the New England Patriots, if you go talk to Coach Bill Belichick, they win consistently, not because it's complicated. He keeps it real simple. Know your job and do your job. You go ask him, know your job, do your job. Teenagers, high school or middle schoolers, honor your father and mother. So guess what that allowed me to do? That allowed me to be able to listen to difficult coaches. That allowed me to be able to listen to, sometimes if I get pulled over by law enforcement who may not be having a good day, I still learn how to deal with those situations, but I learned all of it right back at home. That's what I would share to anybody that's listening.
All right, we're going to wrap up that. With that, we're going to wrap up this last installment of our Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer series. Can't thank you enough for being here, Mr. Williams, taking time out of your busy schedule to come to your second home. So from myself, Nathan, Jerry, our youth education team, all the way up to our president, David Baker, we want to thank you for all that you've done for the game. I like to say, you know, the game of football we watch on TV today wouldn't be what it is without guys like Aeneas and our other Hall of Famers' impact. So thank you all for you've done for the game, and thank you for everything you've done for the Hall of Fame. We're happy to have you back here in Canton.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. So thank you guys. I've already given kudos as far as the team here, but just as Jake said, the other caveat, there is no interest in this game without you guys. You guys are a third of our population, but 100% of our future. And I'm excited because you guys are inquisitive, you grow, you're innovative, keep growing. But thank you all for coming and even believing that there was something that I could say that had benefit to your lives. So thank each and every one of you all. So give yourselves a hand.
All right, one of the 326 best to ever step on a football field, class of 2014 inductee, Mr. Aeneas Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.